Hey guys, welcome to another Wednesday night live broadcast with me, Mike, and Emma from Objective Secured.
We finally made it. Sorry about the delay.
Hey, we're still before 9 o'clock. They can't complain.
But I did say that we would be live in 10, 15 minutes ago.
Just needed a reset. It's fine.
Yeah.
Hope you're all doing well. Welcome, Harry, our first joinee of the night.
Hi, Harry.
Actually, while we've got you, Harry, how would you feel about playing a game against an orc army with that grot army of yours? We posted about it. I'm sure that you wouldn't mind one last hurrah with the 300 of them, would you? Be awesome to be able to say, like, yes, we're going to do it. So just post in the comments if you feel like it.
Do you need two people to say yes to that?
Oh, I've already decided that then I'm like, he's not going to argue.
All right.
Owen will just say yes.
Oh, Harry.
Never again. Oh, not even for a video? Not even for a game?
Oh, shame.
I want to downvote that. How can I downvote that on this laptop? I'm sure I can. There we go. We've got angry face.
At least I know what the angry face is for this time.
It is bloody cold.
It is really cold.
Yes, Owen, it is.
I've got a blankie on my lap as well.
Yeah, she's got a nana blankie. The games room where we record is as far away from any sort of heater as physically possible.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's saying something because our heater's actually in the shed at the moment.
Yeah. I wonder if we do have a gas point in this room. I might have to do that for a fortnight from now.
Yeah.
So welcome along, guys, and we've seen a few more of you join up. I see Harry saying yes, maybe one last game. Good, that's what I wanted to see. That's awesome. So we might as well. We asked earlier in the day. It was about 8 hours ago now, looking at Emma's post.
Okay.
Whether or not you guys had any questions for us, and we've actually had quite a few. So we figured we'd just dive.
A couple of them are even sensible.
Yeah, well, the ones that Matt Davey didn't reply to.
Yes, we'll dive in from the top.
Welcome, guys. We've still got a few joining, so we might ramble on for another minute or two because get a bit of a crowd.
To ramble on. So we have got a couple of different questions here. Some of them are going to be a bit tricky for us to answer tonight. Some of them we don't have enough information to answer well. Some of them I think that it warrants a little bit more discussion than we probably got space for tonight.
Yeah.
So we might see what we can do. They're all really good questions. Well, some of them are really good questions, some of them less so. So we'll see whether or not we can have a way to address all of them.
Yeah. Welcome along, guys. Yes. Turn the heater on. I've seen that comment a few times now. Maybe we have to go and get that out and unwrap it.
Yeah.
Stores in the shed over the summertime, but yes, it's getting a bit cooler at nights these days.
Daniel's not wearing any pants. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, it's nothing new. I mean, it's not Friday though, so it's a bit out of theme.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why we call it on a Wednesday.
No, it's one of the reasons we stopped recording on with a glass top
That's
table.
You'll also notice the camera's higher, so
yeah.
The
number of times that we had to go, no, Mick, you've got to go put some pants on. We cannot record.
I do have pants on. Should I show up and show them?
Nah.
Oh, well, anyway.
Shorts.
It's bloody cold.
I've got thermals on. He's got a pair of shorts.
I'll be right.
Alrighty.
So, we'll literally go through. If you want to see what the questions are coming, Emma posted them up early today with our really horrible photo of us, asking what questions you wanted to answer. So there's about 40-something comments. So we're just going to basically run through them from the top to the bottom, answer what we can, ignore what we can't, and see where we are in an hour's time, basically.
Alrighty. So Aaron, press the button now. My phone gone dark. Hang on a second. Aaron,
I'm glad you laughed, Dan. By the way, like glass top table comments. Yep.
Oh, it's nasty. What do you guys think about the upcoming hobby rankings for the BCP app? Are we considering using them at our events? Good question, Aaron.
And we're done. Thanks for watching. No, BCP is a funny one. It's obviously very tailored to the ITC format that's run on the west coast of the States. And I saw a lot of the preliminary work in the background in one of the secret groups that I'm part of in regards to ICC. And I'm not necessarily convinced it's just a yes, we should use it, even though it is part of BCP and it does make our lives significantly easier because it will track a lot of the soft scores. At the moment, the TO component does have an option for us to put soft scores in, but we have to manually do that. I'm also not convinced that the way they've set it up is necessarily in the best interest of the hobby for the events that we run and what we try and encourage.
I
So
think we need to get a bit more information and see what it's going to look like and how it's going to work a little bit before we're able to answer that.
yeah, whether it's
Yeah.
with a yes or no, I don't think we can say that either way at the moment.
So are we considering it? Yep, we're considering it. It's a nice unbiased opinion there coming from Diffie.
Well, Diffie is also talking to us about using Down Under pairings for an event.
Yeah.
We were hoping to use it for WATC, but it's the level of complexity for that was probably a little bit past where and to be fair, BCP wouldn't even consider coping with
No.
what we did for WATC. So
So our beautiful Excel spreadsheet was pulled back out again, and
yeah,
score.
we used our old tournament software.
Yeah.
But no, look, we will consider using Down Under pairings at some point in the future just to test it out and see how it functions in Perth.
Mhm.
But in the short term, are we going to use the hobby rankings from BCP app?
We're considering it.
Maybe.
Yep.
Jury's out.
Nothing like a definite maybe.
Absolutely.
How can Jason beat Anthony Ellison?
Well, there is a suggestion in the comments there of a stick.
Mm.
And then Anthony replies and says that Jason can pay him to let him win, but I think that's kind
So
of a
we've got
hollow
two
victory.
options there.
And then there's also a comment about a hotel room and all sorts of stuff, and I'm going to leave that one alone, Justin.
I think blackmail is the underlying thread through that comment.
Yeah, so
So if we're serious, then we could look at practicing.
I think it's actually endemic of the two players in question.
I don't think it's actually a serious question, but since you asked,
No.
it, we're going to answer.
Yeah. Anthony's using the Tau. So it's the other army he's got in the background that he was working on last I saw was Eldar, Craftworld Eldar. So he's got two armies with current codexes, with all the stratagems, all the sneaky options. And Jason's basically playing Index Space Wolves.
Mm.
There's your problem right there. I would say you're probably going to have a hard time without branching out into the other Space Marines until the Codex. And then once you get the Codex, you'll probably have Anthony crying in the corner, sadly.
Well, the other thing is that when you do get the Codex, Anthony's going to have been playing with his Codex for potentially up to,
Yeah, but
a
this
year,
is
2
Space
years.
Wolves, and I'm sure anyone here watching will understand what I mean when I say that, because the Space Wolves Codex is always bonkers. So just hold out hope there, Jace. It's coming. You'll be fine. Give it.
Your time will come.
Well, by my guesses, we should have most of the codexes within the next 4 months tops.
Mm.
We're going to have they haven't officially released the dates, but we know we're going to have Death Watch on the 12th of May, the Harlequins the 19th of May, and the Imperial Knights rapidly thereafter. And then we've only got 4 other codexes: Space Wolves, Orcs, Sisters of Battle, Genestealer Occult. 5, and the Inquisition book, which is kind of the mishmash leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
They can't stretch that out to the end of the year, and we know that Sisters of Battle is next year. So they've got 4 books to do in the next 7 months. We will have them all very rapidly. Hopefully by show, we'll have them all.
Fingers crossed a month before would be great.
Yeah. Not like WATC.
3 days
I
before would be
guarantee that
awesome.
FAQ is going to drop in September, and it's going to be at some stupid date just before show. God, what a nightmare that was. Very quickly before we go on to anything else, there are a couple of things here. Aravan, yep, congratulations to all the winners for Best in the West.
Oh, yes.
We were fortunate enough to...
I had a nice segue for that, but that's okay.
Well, I'm just trying to get it before all the comments disappear. We were fortunate enough to be asked by Rye to come in. We got to present our own award, which was a cool one because I just got to pick the coolest looking model. And
it was well painted.
oh yeah, it was an awesome conversion. The dude had spent a huge amount of time and effort on it. It was a Nurgle Knight, if you saw it. There's photos of it. I think Rye took photos of it, and they should be on the Games Workshop Perth website, Facebook page, I should say. And yeah, we got to go in and check out the judging, and I even got to split a couple of the votes because the high end of the field was very, very tight. So yeah, it was really cool. So congratulations to the winners there.
I see that Richard has suggested that we bring out our own line of long johns. I think that'll go beautifully with our line of oven mitts.
Yeah, you need them. But yeah, so congratulations to all the guys at Best in the West.
Yeah.
Some really fantastic entries. I grabbed a few snaps of it, but I haven't wanted to publish them because I know that there's some much better photos coming. So I know Rye had them taken a few days prior to the actual judging, so there's some proper photos.
Right.
So hopefully we'll see those soon if they're not already on the Facebook page. I think that's all. Have we gone to see the Avengers? I have. Emma hasn't.
Some of us have.
I took the kids.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it yet, Blue Flying Space Sharks. That's all I'm going to say. Anyone who's seen it knows what I'm going with there.
I'm not happy because he came home and gave me a whole heap of spoilers.
I did not. I
So
said the
now
same
I'm-
thing that
now
I've just
I'm
said.
No, you didn't.
I did so.
Now I'm sulking, and so he keeps coming up with all these things to annoy me even more. It's not a sensible move, just so that you know.
Yeah, well, we're done. It's done. I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see it again.
We got work to do.
Okay, so Jason,
Okay,
yeah, wait for your codex. You'll be fine once you get that.
we promise. Evan would like a campaign to let everyone keen for Wild Moose premixed drinks on offer at events.
I don't even know what that is. Is that
It's
the cider thing that they had?
No, it's a premix whiskey and dry.
Oh, yeah. So they had that at one of
Yeah,
was
it's
it
down
at
in
Albany? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do with that, Evan.
It was actually pretty good, and it was really cheap.
Jason Robinson asked, "How will Tau adapt to post FA?" Sorry, how would? Oh my goodness, how Tau will adapt post FAQ? Crisis suits, leave them at home or no?
So the FAQ is a very big question, and it might have to be the topic of a podcast as opposed to
Yeah.
anything else. How will Tau adapt? They actually do all right out of the FAQ by and large. The lack of turn one reliable charges now out of Deep Strike means it buys them at least one more turn of shooting. Their own Deep Strikers have generally an extended range so that you can essentially afford to put Crisis Suits in reserve and drop them turn one, depending on what they're armed with, just to keep them safe. But by and large, the Crisis Suit's biggest problem is its price. I mean, they're just over 40 points a model without any guns. And by the time you give them decent weapons, you're closing on 80, 90, 100 points a suit. And if you're going to do that, you kind of have to build an army around them. So there are ways of doing it. It generally involves the far side enclaves and then layering like Markalite hits, drop zone clear, the stratagem, the command and control node stratagem. You kind of have to plan it all out. And then it's kind of a turn two drop now because the weapons you want to put on it are such that you can't drop them in your own deployment zone and then fire at the target. So how do they adapt? They actually do all right, but it's going to require some changes in tactics to use crisis suits. They're more a support unit if you're not going to go with the big crisis bomb using the far side enclaves. So leave them at home or no. In a standard Tau army, yeah, I'd probably leave them at home, sadly.
However, if you choose to use them, then I'm sure you'll do awesome with them. Okay, Selby would like to know any chance of a Shadespire event prior to show, and are we able to share any more details on the Grand Clash event for show? Oh, I know the answer to this one. So yes, we are having a Shadespire event prior to show. So the intention is to run that on the 9th of June.
Yep.
Which is our mixed gaming day.
So that day will include 40k, and it'll also include Age of Sigmar.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually have the preliminary pack for the Grand Clash now.
Yep.
We've been very fortunate that Warhammer World have sent a lot of that information to us straight away. We're still going through it. What we'll probably try and do is pull out all the relevant information from it and use the core of that pack as a test run to actually run the event, because we haven't run an event with it before. It's probably worthwhile knowing what we're doing.
So, which is why we're doing it on the 9th of June as a practice. So the intention is 4 rounds with a 5th round as the final.
Yep.
We're playing with the idea around length of those rounds. So there's been some suggestion that each of those rounds, because it's best of 3 per round, some suggestions that we can do that in just an hour for each round. Warhammer World suggested it could take up to an hour and a half.
Well, that was mostly off the back of the American Grand Clashes they'd seen, where those guys like to run 4 games on day 1 and then the final on day 2, which is a bit baffling.
Well, it is baffling because it means that you have, so for the Grand Clash, they have 64 players actually play in day 1, and then just 2 players come back for day 2.
No. It's not a knockout. Everyone still plays game 5.
No, it is. That's the way he explained it.
That's not what the players pack explains.
That's the way he explained it to when we were talking about it, because he said that if we were able to run it on one day, that'll work better because it will mean everyone will hang around to watch that game whereas normally that's run with just the two of them.
Well, there you go. Because that's not what I took away from the players pack. But there you go.
It sometimes depends on what knowledge you have going into reading a players pack as to how you interpret it.
Yeah, that's true.
So with him saying that it's a shame to have all of the players go home and not watch that final,
Okay. Well, either way, we've got the pack now. We're going to start going through it and figuring it all out, and hopefully publishing something on it in the next couple of days for the 9th of June.
Yep.
And we're going to try it out and see what happens. We are going to be getting the full Grand Clash pack in regards to what they used around the world. So we're going to get the trophies. We're going to get all the exclusive cards, all the foil cards, all the other paraphernalia that they give to any of the other Grand Clashes around the world we get, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that, as far as I'm aware, I don't know of another Grand Clash being run in Australia. James, who we spoke to at Warhammer World, certainly didn't know of any, and he organises them. So you'd like to think he knew.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna have one that hopefully will attract a good pool of players, not just locally but internationally and interstate. Of sort of the East Coast, it'd be great to see them come over because there are only 64 spots. That's probably the biggest thing, is that we are limited in how many players are going to be allowed to attend. So 64 spots, first in, best dressed,
Mm-hmm.
and the tickets for that will go up with show very shortly as well. So Games Workshop have been very forthcoming in regards to that particular event so far, and they've given us a whole bunch of guidelines and suggestions on a number of different facets of it. So it should be really exciting.
Yeah. We're still talking around the whole painting requirements for that and those kinds of things. So as soon as we have any information about that, we will let you know any further, really.
Yeah. Now, before we go on to the next question, we should also point out that, yes, we do have Shadespire in the house now.
Yes, we
And
do.
I've assembled it all.
He has
And
click-clacked it together.
I even started teaching my 5-year-old how to play it.
That went
And-
well.
Well, she got through turn 1. We did the intro thing with just the one model each, and she picked the lady Stormcast because she didn't want the bloke. And if my 5-year-old, after 10 minutes of explaining, kind of grasped it, I'm really hopeful that that the average player can pick it up and play it quickly.
Yeah.
The goal will be to basically run hour-long rounds as a test case. So, yeah, it's certainly going to be an event that is going to be interesting to run in a few weeks' time, and then it's going to be bigger and scarier for show.
Mhm.
So,
Cody has added to that, saying definitely some talk around Underworlds would be great.
yeah, the what's been really cool about the putting it all together and actually sitting down and reading the rules are fairly intuitive. The one thing I should probably point out to everyone is that when you submit a list, obviously for 40k or something else, you obviously write down all your points and blah, 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 blah. In Age of Sigmar Shadespire, you have to submit the warband name you're using, and obviously those models are fixed, so you can't change them. You have to submit your deck, and that has to be done as essentially a list submission component because they all have to be submitted to Games Workshop as part of the Grand Clash. So it's something that I suppose players need to start thinking about. There will be a list submission component, and it'll essentially just be asking what's in the deck, what warband you're using, and then what cards are in the deck. So yeah, it's interesting. We'll certainly have more on that as we sort of uncover it over the next week or two while we get through the players pack and publish one of our own.
Mhm.
Can we live stream the top tables? Diffie asks on the chat here. Yes, maybe, definitely, probably.
Yeah.
The internet signal there is okay. It'll ultimately come down to how much bandwidth we can access. We had, I think, 3 different Wi-Fi's on the day, but I think we probably need a hard line to get that to work. So yeah, definitely, maybe.
We're going to give it a go.
Yeah.
Our intention is to try and get as much live
Online
stream
coverage.
as we can.
Yeah, for sure. Platform to suggest a competition for best team costumes and photos for future events.
You suggest a way. That is my kind of suggestion, Sheldon. Good work.
You want to see these guys dress up?
Yeah, I love it.
Do you know what some of them are going to dress up as with you saying that?
I like to leave it open to people's imaginations.
Oh, God. All right, moving on. Next question. Wayne, smaller games, skirmish for AOS and kill team for 40k when it drops, and can they be made for a competitive environment? Absolutely. One of the first events we ever ran 2002,
Would be 16.
3
All right, yeah, I was going to say.
was essentially a kill team day as part of Outpost 6030. It might have even been earlier than that.
No.
Early 2000s.
I would say it would be 2003. That'd be my guess.
I ran Skulls
guessing.
in 05, so it was
Yeah,
before that.
It was definitely before we got married.
Anyway, so yeah, you can definitely do it. I think the Shadespire style game for AOS is really conducive to that. And I certainly think that while you can play sort of that skirmish level of AOS, I feel like the game's actually more involved using Shadespire because you do have those individual rules and models and cards. Whereas if you're running a 400-point army of AOS, it's kind of your unit charges my unit and we roll the dice and see who wins. I think Shadespire fills that niche really well. I know there's a few places around the world that have done that sort of kill team style game for AOS, and I'm sure they can work, but I feel like AOS fills that gap really well. As for 40k, yes, we are going to get new kill team rules, which would be really interesting to see because you could argue that Necromunda fills the same role, and to a lesser extent, Shadow War Armageddon. That's the one I'm thinking of, but that kind of never really took off the way everyone kind of hoped it would because it was kind of a half-formed game based on Necromunda. So, yeah, I think until we see the kill team rules, it's a bit hard to say. But I remember when we ran it, you had to bring along essentially two forces. You had to bring goons and your kill team, and you basically played two games against the same opponent, one as the goons and one as the kill team. Same mission, same terrain, same everything. And that's how we got the scores. So, could we do that again? Yeah, I think so. We just need to wait for the updated kill team rules and see how they work. Or maybe adapt them from 7th, but that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
So,
so yes, they can. Will we do it?
Yeah, probably. We'll give it a crack.
Yeah. Never say never.
No.
Good night, Diffie.
See you, mate. Bree has the next question. I like Justin's response, actually.
What are our thoughts for post FAQ meta and the winners and losers of the FAQ? And Justin has responded with winners are the fluffy players, losers, ITC, ETC, meta list copycats.
He's not necessarily wrong. I think the FAQ ignoring all the standard codex FAQs are all good. The big FAQ document, there's two significant changes in there that will change competitive play. The one is the data sheet limit, or the rule of 3 as it's been nicknamed colloquially, and the Battle Brothers beta rules. And in my mind, if you are thinking that the beta rules are going to go away, I am of the opinion that that's crazy. They're not going anywhere. I also think calling them beta is Games Workshop's way of having an out for when they change things. Because what they've done is they've essentially shown us that they're quite willing to change points, rules, everything that's in a published book, and not just the main rule book, but in codexes that have been out a handful of weeks.
Yeah.
Which means that every rule is potentially up in the air to be changed. I think
so
all
why
this
bother calling them a beta rule?
Exactly.
Then? Why not just change the rule?
So part of what I'm thinking is that much like the psychic focus and the character targeting rules, they're basically saying that this isn't the final wording. These are likely to change, but are they going to go away? No, they're not going anywhere.
In essence, we understand that they're going to stay. However, there may be some, changes to the wording and those kinds of things.
Well, like what they did with Smite. They changed it from a -1 to your dice roll to a +1 to the casting target, which essentially achieves the same thing, but it does change the outcomes.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a great example of them saying it's not going anywhere, but how it's worded is going to be up to conversation. So if you keep it in mind that if you just say, yes, we're going to use the entire document, all the beta, everything, you probably can't go too far wrong, because the best result you have is that it either A, stays the same, B, it gets better for you, or C, gets worse for you. And if you've been playing with it, there's only one result in those three that's actually going to hurt you. So I don't think there's any negatives there for playing with them. I think the people who are angsty about it the most is actually around the rule of 3, which Games Workshop have been very clever and said, hey, we're gonna say this is what organized play. We've essentially got a new type of play now. We've got match play and organized play. This is what we suggest that organized play uses. But it's up to the TO. And I don't know a single TO I've spoken to so far that hasn't at least agreed that maybe the number is a little bit flexible as to how many times you can use a data sheet. I know there's an event happening on the east coast of Australia that's going to say 4 instead of 3 at 2,000 points. Me personally, I think 3 is a great round number because at 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 points, you're not spamming, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 predators and things. There's a few loopholes where you can do it, but because of the way the Battle Brothers beta rule works, you're not going to be doing it by combining everything into one detachment. So now if you want to run, I saw someone saying they could still run 9 Demon Princes by using them from the Chaos Space Marine book, the Demon book, and then the Nurgle or the Thousand Suns book, because they're all different data sheets, which is fine. But then if you're going to do that, to get 3 HQs in each, you're now going to be needing to have at least 3 troops in each. So you're kind of balancing yourself in that regard because you're then having to pay those taxes. And yes, you can do the taxes cheaply, but you are having to make an active effort to achieve that variation. And particularly in team events, that just hurts the team. So I really like the FAQ. They still haven't fixed the terrain rules. And the one part of the rules that's really funny is the ruins thing. I'm sure everyone who's watching this understands what I mean, where if you block the top floor of a ruin and you can't place a model there, when you charge it, you can't charge it, which directly contradicts another answer in a different FAQ. That's probably my biggest, I don't know, complaint with the whole document. But I don't feel like you can say, oh, we're going to we're just going to ignore that particular FAQ answer because we don't like it. At which point, well,
But it may need a little bit more clarification.
Well, sadly, it's really clear whether the intent is.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but we're not going to have any change before September now, so it is what it is. And it just means that you're going to have to plan your assaults. And I know that a lot of people have said, oh, it just makes gunline armies even better. I think if people are getting 40, 50, 60 models up on top of buildings to fire, there's something interesting happening with the terrain at that point. I mean, we have ruins, and we have a couple of boards that are fairly heavy in ruins, but we also have boards where there's only one floor and you're not going to get more than 10, 12, 15 models up there, particularly once you get the 32 or the 40 mil bases from some of the big artillery style units. And on that topic, I've just got a couple of comments here. Hope beta warp time rules go away. Absolutely not. You and I, Zane, have had that conversation offline and you're wrong.
Oh, he's so modest. There's no
2 Supreme Command and a battalion would get you the Demon Prince spam. Yeah, it would. But you can't. And Timothy also says you can do it by using the Demon keyword. No, you can't. You'd have to use because it's the faction keyword you're looking at, not just the keywords. So you'd have to be looking at either using Nurgle or Khorne. Well, you can't use Khorne. I suppose you can use Khorne. You'd be using one of the Chaos God keywords. You couldn't be doing it with Demon. It's the same reason why you can't put Mortarion in a Demon detachment. We'll get some other stuff here. How do you feel about limiting duplicate detachment types now, given the rule of 3? I know there's still tournaments that still do it, but we're still very early. We haven't run an event under this setting yet.
9th of June, people.
9th of June.
You heard it here first.
I think limiting the detachment types still makes a little bit of sense. How it's limited is the question. Like, I feel like limiting the Supreme Command for 0 to 1, limiting the auxiliaries to 0 to 1 just to get around some of the little quirks is probably a sensible decision. But I don't know it's a requirement these days because the rule of 3 does fix a lot of it.
Richard asks, have we noticed that some of the old ruins kits are no longer available on GW?
No,
I hadn't noticed that.
Might have to go and buy, because I've got a board that's halfway through using them, so maybe we have to go and buy one more of those.
I will admit that I don't spend a lot of time looking at their website to see what terrain they've got available at the moment.
No, we've got 30-something boxes of terrain now, which is kind of crazy. So we're we've hit a threshold of not just space to store them, but logistically to move them around.
Yeah.
So
we've got the Realm of Battle board that we.
yeah, the big show board that I'm wanting to get off the ground and finish. So I might actually have to pull my finger out and get that done.
Do you think?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I reckon.
Warp Talons were like a word, Zane. You're still wrong. Could be linked to the FAQ. Could be coincidental for the ruins. Yeah, look, it could be. I think those kits though are from 4th edition. I think those are, and we're also going to be getting new ruins kits. That if you go and take a sneak peek, they were previewed in the Necromunda release. It was around that time. There's someone spotted that they shouldn't be there in one of the pictures in White Dwarf, and we haven't seen those ruins yet, so they're coming. Hopefully we'll see them soon. Is it best to leave the rules moderation to GW, Tim? Yeah, I actually think so these days.
Yep.
With Games Workshop's now heavy involvement and public involvement in regards to playtesting, in regards to answering questions and being very proactive in how they engage the player base, there's no need for rules committees and judging committees and ITC documents and ETC documents, and I feel like a lot of those things just aren't needed as a general, I suppose, document for everyone to use, because a lot of the answers are now there, and anything that's not there, it tends to be something so obscure that it's not going to ever appear in a document. It's something that the TO is just going to have to handle. So I certainly am I mean, we changed the missions, but that's about all we really change. And that's only so that we've got a better method of scoring the games to actually make sure we get a winner. And that's not uncommon for the rest of the world as well. It's basically only Games Workshop's head office that sticks to the core rulebook rules.
Rulebook missions, you mean?
Rulebook missions, yeah. So, yeah, do I think it's best to leave the rules moderation to them? Yeah. Because at the moment they're doing a good job of it. We may not agree with all of their decisions, but at least we're getting decisions, which is a far cry from where we were when OBSEC started 3 years ago. It was a far cry from where we were. So, yeah, I do think that's a positive thing. You'll have to expand on the question, though, with the Adepticon release there, Tim, because I don't know what you're referring to there, mate. If you've got a link or something you can post in the comments, we're happy to look at it. Yes, Wayne, there was a Lego piece in one of the Games Workshop photos in the White Dwarf in the background. That was an amazing photo, and, of course, the community picked it up in a second, and it's a bright red Lego brick. I'll see if I can find the photo later. Moving on, though, post-FAQ meta winners and losers.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
the jury's out. I mean, the London GT has just published the 440 lists for that event. Good luck to the TOs for that, because that's going to be a huge, huge weekend. I think it was 440. It rivals LVO and Adepticon. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
So they published those publicly. I've got the link for those as well. I'll probably put it in the OBSEC Gamers group. Some really interesting lists there. They are post-FAQ lists, and we'll kind of start seeing what that means once that event's run, and we start seeing some of the podiums. Justin's actually got two really good answers, two really good questions, I should say, and I think this one might even have to wait for a podcast because it's a fairly lengthy topic.
Yeah, and one that I really need to think on.
Yeah.
So the question is...
hang on. Okay. Tim, yes, that's exactly what I was referring to, the Adepticon Kill Team release that was previewed, the ruins. Thank you very much for pointing that out, Tim, because I knew it was around that time and I just couldn't pick where it was. But yes, thank you very much. Sorry, back to Justin's question.
Okay, Justin's question was that the hobby is dominated by, I'm just going to paraphrase here, is dominated by males. So how can we how can males basically encourage female partners, friends, children who show little or no interest in tabletop gaming to actually jump in and be part of this interesting world?
I like that he finishes with perhaps share what initially drew you into the hobby.
When I work that out, I'll let you know. So just to share a little bit, when Mike and I first got together, I think I probably expressed some part of an interest in whatever this hobby was.
Yeah.
And was very quickly and strongly told, no, this is my hobby and I don't want you having any part of it whatsoever. And look where we are now.
I even
So
found
that went well for both of us.
I even found the first models you ever painted a few days ago.
Oh God, they need to go in.
Oh,
the
no,
bin.
they might need to go photos and go on the website. Who wants to see the first goblins that Emma ever painted?
No, I don't think Emma doesn't want to see those.
Oh, I know where they are.
I was actually thinking about those today. Thank God we've got stencils now.
We've also got about how many was it? No, we got the plague bearers. They're the other ones. You did a plague bearer demon as well, not long ago, because I painted it step by step and then showed you how to paint it step by step.
Ah, that's right.
And you did a really good job.
Well, clearly my painting improved, but it didn't have much. I set the bar pretty low. Yeah, so as far as what we can do to try and encourage partners, it's an interesting question and one I will think on and
I have to do a podcast with that one.
yeah, come back to.
Yep, see, people wanting to see those goblins. I'm going to make sure I go and dig them out. I will find them tomorrow in daylight and get some photos.
I think so.
I might even make Emma take photos of them, like with her good camera, because otherwise they'll get dodgy photos from my phone.
Yeah, let's do that.
So
I know what's going to happen then. Did he roll a dice to see if he would ask me out? Quite possibly. Pros and cons of having reserve pools or substitutes. Oh, this is a really good question.
Yeah, no, this
one
is
that we've actually talked about lots.
Yeah, and this is actually a question from Tim, who hopefully is still in the chat now because he's answering questions, which is awesome.
Yep.
He's basically talking about sideboards.
Yeah, so the question, sorry, I got halfway through reading it and then stopped. I'd like to talk about the pros and cons of having reserve pools or substitutes that you could mix and match into competitive army, mainly for balance purposes and to encourage more well-rounded armies. Do you think adding a substitute pool of, say, 25% of the points value being played might work? For example, if you had 1,500 points, you could have 375 points of substitutes to pick from. This would allow you to take units that may have been previously highly situational and therefore may not have got much play in the past.
As a competitive player, I have a number of hurdles that I can already see as a TO, thinking about how I would utilize it as a player. And sideboards is one that I know a lot of people have been sort of going, oh, we should really try sideboards. But I hit so many hurdles with it that I just don't know how best to sort of apply it to a tournament. Because, so let's use it as a 1,500 point army, and then you've got two 500 point sideboards. So it's essentially a 2,000 point game, and we're using 25% as a sideboard.
So you've got a 1,000 point core army.
1,500 points of core.
Okay, 1,500 points of core, and then an additional
two 500 point blocks, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
So the first thing you have to do is say, okay, cool, you have to use both sideboards at least once at the tournament. Because if you don't, then there's nothing stopping the players just bringing two identical sideboards or no sideboards. And you're just playing a 2,000 point army, which is the natural result of anyone who's trying to play really competitively. You're just going to build the best army you can regardless. So the first thing you have to do is say, yes, you have to use sideboards, and yes, you have to bring sideboards and you have to use them. Then you have to say that the sideboards would have to be different, because otherwise there's just nothing stopping people taking two identical sideboards.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to then limit how many units they can cross over between the two sideboards, whether they have to be completely different detachments. There's a few questions, and how you instigate that is the second part of the problem. The third part of the problem comes when you try and decide which sideboard you're going to use.
This is the biggest problem that I have with it.
Yeah, so as an example, I've built a nice, well-rounded Craft World Order army, and I know there's a few of you laughing already. But, so you've got my 1,500 points of Craft World Order, and then I've got a big chunk of it that's all Guardians with Shuriken catapults designed to kill infantry. And then I've got another chunk of it which is all fire prisms and anti-tank guns designed to kill tanks. And I come up to the table, and there's Emma's Imperial Guard army. And the core 1,500 points is a balanced
And
Guard
by
army.
the way, it looks amazing. Just saying.
The two sideboards that she has are basically the same. One's anti-armor and one's anti-infantry. Who decides what when?
Yeah, that's my biggest issue.
If I then get to the table and go, what's Emma going to take? I think she's going to take the tanks. So I put my tanks in, but then she's there going, oh, is he going to take the tanks? He's probably going to want to take the tanks. So, but if I put the tanks in, you end up in this weird situation where what you're trying to avoid is a rock, paper, scissors scenario. And all you do is create a rock, paper, scissors scenario, because it literally becomes, oh, I lucked out and got the half that I needed to beat the half that you got. And I don't know there's a good answer to that.
And it's similar to, well, in my mind, it's similar to how the team event worked, in that you got to put up one player and then, so one team put up one player and then the opposite team put up basically two opponents.
Yeah.
You got to pick which one you wanted. So if you're in a situation where you're playing a singles event, basically do you go, well, one person picks their sideboard first, which then gives their opponent an advantage.
Yeah.
Or do you both
do it blind?
Do it blind.
At which point, what's the
point?
point?
What's the point? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and so, yeah, I mean, I see, Tim, you've written that the biggest problem that you see is the added time that it would take.
You'd have to allow a good 5 to 10 minutes at each round just to go through that process, because it wouldn't be straightforward. And then you've got the packing and unpacking side of it, because you'd have to have different boxes for different things. You've also got other little complications that a lot of people don't think about, where you go, okay, cool. I've got a squad of 5 tactical Marines in my main detachment. Can I take 5 more in one of my sideboards and increase the first unit? And I know that while that seems a little bit obscure, it was one of the first questions we got when we started talking about sideboards from a player. And naturally, you have to go, well, no, you can't change your core force, which means that you end up with these 2 sort of 500-point blocks that never quite add up right, because 500 points, you end up using like a spearhead or a vanguard or an outrider where it's 3 fast attack or 3 heavy support and the required HQ, and that's kind of all it is. And I still can't see a value in that because of the blind scenario that you're faced with, where unless you've got like this awesome, like Dark Reapers are a great example, or Flying Hive Tyrants would have been until the FAQ. My 2 sideboards, one has 3 Flying Hive Tyrants in it, or 5 Flying Hive Tyrants in it, and my other sideboard has nothing but Morlocks in it. Which one am I going to use? I'm going to use the Flying Hive Tyrants every day, and I'm going to maximize what I put in the main army to begin with. So I don't know that sideboards really work. I don't.
Prior to this, we had actually had a fair amount of discussion around it, and we hadn't come up with a way to make it work.
No, not that I think is fair and reasonable anyway.
Yeah.
Zane suggests person who chooses sideboard first goes second. That's an interesting one. But that doesn't make any sense. Surely if you get to pick the sideboard second, you'd go second, because you're countering...
That's exactly right.
You're countering their sideboard, so they should get to go first. That would make more sense.
I think that's what Zane actually means.
Yeah.
That the person who gets the advantage for picking the sideboard has to go second.
He then goes on to say it also means balanced sideboards, but that defeats the purpose.
If you've got a balanced sideboard, why wouldn't you just take a
run
balanced
it?
army?
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Tim says it's basically a lottery with the game decided prior to the game with luck, nearly more than skill. Yeah, that's the biggest concern we have, is that you will end up in situations where you get an ideal like matchup where you get the right sideboard against the right opponent with the right army, you just flog them. And there'll be other times where you'll get the wrong sideboard and get flogged yourself. And there'll be other times where you both get the wrong sideboard and you spend the next 2.5 hours basically flailing at each other like a bad episode of The Simpsons. So I don't know that sideboards are an answer.
How the game happens anyway.
Yeah,
really.
yeah, exactly.
So it
could even be made worse though, because
I understand it could be made worse, but I'm just saying those are pretty much the scenarios that you've got with an event. So what does adding a sideboard actually add to that?
Exactly. And Zane's saying, Zane hates the idea, but he's just throwing around ideas. Yeah, it's all good, man. Like, part of the reason for these is so that we can throw these ideas around for everyone to have a conversation with. I just don't know that there's a good way of sort of applying a sideboard to 40k. It kind of works for other game systems.
I guess it could kind of work if you're going, okay, well, I have to make a decision based on the 1,500 points that I know are your core points for this army. So based on that, do I want to be adding in more infantry, or do I want to be adding in more, whatever?
Yeah.
So if you're making the decision based on that, then I can see that there's a potential, because we do have some armies that are, so like you say, you've got some armies that have got 7 Flying Hive Tyrants. So if you had a sideboard that could potentially, obviously not anymore, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you had a sideboard that could potentially work really well with that you could add in possibly, I don't know.
I think the other part of it is you're adding even more complexity to it, because then you're picking up extra synergies. Depending on what you put in those sideboards, you could very easily end up in a situation where you're generating new combos and new things each game, which is a good thing, but it also means that once you find something that's really cool, it just becomes part of the main list. And again, without the incentive to swap sideboards and use them, I don't have the answers for this one. If we, like Richard's saying, drop the points. No, even then, Richard, I don't know that helps, because you potentially polarize the matchup even more. If it's 1,000 points with a 250 or a 500 point sideboard, it might just make it worse. Narrative events, yeah, you're right, it works, where you can have it like an attacker and defender style thing, where you've got a mission, you bring an attacker force and a defender force. I can see that kind of working with the right missions, because if you know you're the attacker, you might not necessarily know who you're playing, but you might have a different way of building the army. So that could work. But in a standard competitive 40k event, I don't know there's a place for it. I can't find a way of, if you've got any ideas, send them through. But I don't know I can come up with a way of making them work to a point where you'd want to have them and want them to be viable. It just makes more sense to build a balanced list at the get-go. So,
Which is pretty much every time we've had a discussion around it, that's what we come back to.
Look, Wayne has a good thing here and says, honestly, the only way it could work would be if they played more than one game. So say, for example, your sideboard A played my sideboard B, and then my sideboard A played your sideboard B, and we played 2 games. The problem is, of course, that that's 5 hours worth of gameplay, and you're going to get maybe 2 games across the day in. And at that point, it becomes a 2-day event. You're playing 8 games over 2 days, which I don't know that we'd cope with, let alone as a player.
Yeah.
So,
but interesting, whether or not something like, if you did it with a much smaller points value in skirmish type games where you could do, I suppose like where you've got the Shadespire where you're doing 3 games in an hour.
Well, I'm kind of hoping that's what Kill Team essentially becomes, because then you would, like I say, play the Goons for one and then the Kill Team for the other, and that kind of does the same thing. But yeah, the sideboards one is a weird one. I don't know. If you've got any suggestions, send them through. I've seen sideboards. War Machine uses them extensively.
Yeah.
And it's not just one, it's 2 or 3 most of the time. Like they'll come along with, and it's not just sideboards, it's full lists. And they can change their caster, so their warlord essentially. They have to stay in faction, but they can change their warlord and then change all the bits that go with that character. So, they are bringing 2 or 3 lists, not just sideboards. But I think that game works in that way because, again, you've got a lower model count, you're changing the whole army. There's very few of us in the hobby that could turn around and field 2 or 3 different 2,000 point armies on the day and bring
I know quite a few of them
painted.
Yeah, that does reduce it significantly.
But also transport them to the event and have them at the event. That's the other hurdle that you have to face.
Yeah.
Another question from Justin next. We've got about 15 minutes left. We're nearing the end of it, so go for it.
Question for both of us. In honor of GW's 40-year anniversary, what has been each of our most memorable GW gaming experiences? Can be any GW products, not limited to WFB, Sigma, or 40K.
No worries, Tim. We're happy to have those conversations, man. You're more than welcome to sing out with any other separate ideas, or if you've got any feedback for the how we can implement them. We're more than happy to listen to our players who come to our events. It's something that we have discussed at length, as hopefully you had a brief glimpse of just now. But we're more than happy to discuss it, mate. So if you've got any suggestions, send them through email, Facebook, however you want to get them to us, and we're more than happy to go through those ideas and air them publicly and see what falls out of it.
That was quite disjointed.
Yeah, I'm reading here and reading there, and it doesn't matter.
All right, did you want to answer the question?
You can go first because mine's a game story.
Okay, well I have a few. So
I'm going to pick 2. Because they're from my earliest days of 40k, and they're things that have stuck out with me and made me stay playing.
So similarly to what I was saying before, with Michael didn't want me involved in the hobby at all. So
is this the Blood Bowl story?
It is.
I'm going to leave the room.
Yeah. So first ever experience.
I'm not kidding.
Where are you going?
I'm leaving the room. I don't want to be in this story.
Put your bum back on the chair. First ever experience playing any kind of this kind of game. We played Blood Bowl, and I smashed him. So he had a little tantrum. We've not played ever since.
No.
And then, so that was, fun.
First half, she was playing Orcs, I was playing Humans. I was down 3-0 at the end of the first half.
Yeah, and he refused to finish.
I was not happy with that.
It was about as close as I've seen him coming to flipping a table. We also went to Warhammer World in 2002.
Yes.
And while Mike went around and had a lovely tour and got to meet Gav Thorpe.
I now have 3 things.
Did I just steal one of your things?
Kind of.
I spent the day sitting in the bar with my granddad, which was actually really lovely. And that's one of my last memories with him. So that was, really lovely. And then I think all of the firsts that we've had with OBSEC have been great as well. So, we ran the first Masters we did, which was just awesome because we had such a fantastic response with that. Then, first road trip that we did was awesome. First doubles event where we had, actually women attending.
Yeah.
We did have Guylaine attending Masters, which was also fantastic for the very first one. And then, hosting the last event that we did that was 120 players. So there's lots of things like that, which are first, which are exciting and there's sort of this seesaw balancing act between, oh my God, why the hell are we doing this? I never want to talk to gamers or be around this ever again, to this is fantastic, I love it. So we just kind of seesaw backwards and forwards, and hopefully while one of us is down, the other one's up, and we, we're not both in the.
It's very rare that we are both. It's very rare that we're both at one end of that seesaw.
Yeah. It is. We do have a rule that only one of us is allowed to be depressed and cranky at any one time.
Yeah. In life in general, not just about this.
Yeah, that's it. Only one of us is allowed to have a tantrum. Only one of us is allowed to be in a bad mood, that kind of thing. So it works relatively well. All right, your 3 stories.
On the day that Emma was at Bugman's Bar drinking with her granddad.
That bar is beautiful, by the way.
We're hoping to visit it again very shortly. Yeah. I went in and had a wander around Warhammer World, which is nothing like it is today, but I still had a wander around. And then decided, you know what, I'm here once, I'm going to go and be a bit ballsy. And I walked into the head office building, not the Warhammer World building. I went into their head office, their, corporate building, went to reception and said to the lady, hi, I'm Michael, I'm from Australia. And she said, hi, what can I do for you? I said, I'd like to meet Andy Chambers, please. And she said, hang on 1 second. And I was half expecting that to be a call to security, but she got off the phone and said, Andy's in a meeting right now, will Gav Thorpe do? And I said, yes he will. And then Gav came down and spent half an hour with me, and we had a quick wander around. And
he signed something.
Yeah, he took me back through the studio a little bit, and it was the most surreal thing because I was fully expecting to just go, "What are you doing?" Like, no.
Nice try. No.
But yeah, so they did, and that was really awesome. And I'm hoping to recreate that later this year and see who I can convince to come out.
I am more than happy to recreate that later this year. I'll sit in the bar.
I figure I'll start with Jess Goodwin and then go Phil Kelly, and then I'm not sure who I can go to next. I have to see who's still in the office at the time. But obviously trying to meet Duncan and some of the boys as well. But that was really cool to have one of those guys who I'd spent the better part of a decade more when we were there, reading about their stuff and like playing with the armies that they'd written. Like he'd written the Dark Elf book just prior to that. And, that was awesome because we, I got to chat to him. I got to chat to the designer of the book, and it was an army I was playing. So that was really cool. I know you're coming now. Look, I've already told them.
Actually, we were on a video call the other day with their head office, and they were just so lovely, aren't they?
James is awesome.
Let us know when you're coming. We'll see what we can organise.
Yeah, he was very, very happy to try and make sure that we got to go in and check things out. So that was really cool. No, I'm not going to go and punch anyone, Zane. That's a really good way to end a relationship we're trying to build.
Plus, I'd like him to be let back into the country at some point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The other 2 things that I can recall that still stand out to this day is the very first game of 40K I ever saw and the very first game of 40K I ever played. The first game I ever saw this goes back to Rogue Trader, so it's a long time ago now. We're talking...
Because he's old.
Late 1980s, like 89, give or take, and 89, maybe 1990. I'm not 100. I can't put a pin on it, but it's around that time. And a friend of mine who I still talk to this day, Tim, has said to me, come around and check out this game. It's awesome. It's awesome. I would have been 12 or 13. He's a couple of years older than I am. And he and his mate Owen, who, again, I still speak to occasionally these days.
So, in 1989, you were not 12 or 13. You're not that old.
I would have been... Well, I was born in 78, so yeah, I would have been.
No.
1990.
Anyway, carry on.
Doesn't matter. at the very least, it was
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
pre-team.
Carry on.
Tim's gone, hey, look, here we go. This is 40k, and he's deployed his orc army in this huge big row, and it's the Rogue Trader orcs, and they're all metal, and they're all painted, and they look amazing. And his opponent has deployed one Eldar Warwalker. And I'm going, I don't get it. And then the orc players kind of moved and done some stuff, and not much has happened. And then the Warwalkers walked out from behind cover and fired 2 virus grenades into the orc horde and tabled the orc army turn 1. And it took about 45 minutes to resolve, because every time the virus grenade hit something on a 3+ it died, and then if it died on a 3+, anyone within 2 inches caught it and died, and then everyone within 2 inches of that died, and it just snowballed out. And it didn't work against everything. It only worked against stuff that didn't have respirators and visors and all sorts of upgrades you had to buy, because Rogue Trader, you paid the points for a human, then you upgraded him to a Space Marine, then you bought him armor, then you bought the powered armor component, then you bought the visor, then you bought the respirator, then you bought. So it was possible to kill Space Marines with it if people forgot to buy the respirators and stuff. But yeah, I sort of looked at the table and went, it was a bit shit. Like 50 minutes in, you've rolled a bunch of dice and taken all the other models off. I don't get it. And it took Tim about 6 months to convince me to go and have another go with it, because we went and played D&D instead, because I just didn't see what the appeal was. Fast forward to my first game, and we were playing a 4-player game with 2 other friends, and I had Harlequins by this stage, my first real 40k army. And
You bought a 40k army before you'd even played?
Yeah, I hadn't bought them at that stage. Tim had lent them to me on the proviso that if I enjoyed the game, I would buy them. $50, by the way. That was expensive back in the early 90s. I think he ripped me off.
I think he's made up for it since.
Probably. They were all painted at least. So that was nice. First game was with a painted army. 4 players around a 6x6 table, give or take. And we had Chaos Space Marines, Tim with Space Marines, and then an Orc player. And the Orc player had kind of just moved around a bit. The Chaos Space Marine player was all tanks, and he'd moved up a bit. And I've looked over at Tim's army. We're playing 2,000. It was 4,000 points, sorry. 4,000 points. I had 18 Harlequins for 4,000 points. The Orcs had about 150 models. The Chaos Space Marine had about 70 models. Tim's got 10. And that really concerned me, because I've known Tim since I was a kid. And I looked at Tim's 10 Space Marines and said, what's that one there holding, Tim? And he's gone, oh, it's a laser designator. And that, in my turn, made me go, oh, crap. And I basically tried to make sure my guys were all out of line of sight from this laser designator. It comes around to Tim's turn, and Tim goes, cool, I'm shooting my laser designator at that Chaos Space Marine tank right there. Rolls to hit, gets a hit. Goes, cool, your turn. And at this point, Mike, aged, somewhere between 11 and 13, is positively crapping himself, going, I know Tim, I know something bad's about to happen, I just don't know what it is, because Tim had a habit of taking the rulebook, because it was his, and then not letting us look at it until the day of the game and write the lists on the spot. So he spent weeks studying it just to mess with us. And then, so I've had my turn, and I've hunkered down even more, going, oh God, this is bad. The other 2 guys have had their turns. Tim's turn rolls around, he goes, cool, on a 2+, my missile lands. And we all went, what? And he shot an orbital missile strike at this Chaos Space Marine army. And we all went, oh God, what does that do? And he went, oh, it's Haywire Minefield. So basically the Chaos Space Marine army ground to a halt, couldn't move, couldn't shoot, couldn't do anything. The Orc player thought that was hilarious and skipped his turn. I asked, what happens when I shoot into the minefield? And Tim looked it up and said, oh, you have a chance to blow up the minefield. So I fired a Shuriken pistol into the minefield and killed a 4,000 point Chaos Space Marine army turn 2. Turn 3. It was the single most defining moment of me ever playing Harlequins, and I've always played them where I can since. So to this day, I don't know Pete's ever quite forgiven Tim for that day, but it was an awesome moment nonetheless. So Rogue Trader as a kid was so complicated, but it generated so many of those moments that have hung around across the editions for me, where I still go, that was absolutely bonkers. And I think every edition has done that for me, but those 2 moments in 40k for me are what showed me the game first and made me go, these rules are weird, followed immediately by, that was the most awesome thing ever, can we do this again? So yeah, they're 2 things that have certainly stuck with me for so many years, and that's why I'm so excited for the next Harlequin Codex, because it means I get to do another murdered Space Elf Death Clown list. So yeah.
Yes, Daniel, he was a freaking nerd. Not much has changed at all.
No. I blame it all on Tim. I will lay it at Tim's feet. I might even try and convince him to.
I blame a lot on Tim.
Look, I don't think he'd ever come on the video, but
Neither do I.
he might succumb to a podcast maybe. But
No, he won't.
I'll convince him.
bet he
It'll be
wouldn't.
fine. But yeah, the Tim's the sole reason that I got into gaming. Off the back of those games, I picked up HeroQuest and Space Crusade. Again, back early 90s from memory.
I'm not sure if we should thank him or blame him.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose anyone who come to our event actually needs to thank him and buy him a nice coffee because that's his poison of choice these days.
Or blame him.
It depends. I think there's a lot of people out there happy that he did what he did.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good guy.
but yeah, that's kind of the defining moment for me and why I got into 40K. So,
And all of these years later, here we are.
yeah, which is kind of scary. I'm just disappointed. You know what Tim did with his original Rogue Trader rulebook? He cut it up because as soon as they released edition 2, he went, I don't need this anymore, and cut it up for the pictures. And you spin forward 30 years, and we're both going, fuck.
Far out.
Yeah, so it's a shame, but digital is still a thing, so you can get copies of it, and they do shop on eBay from time to time. I'd love to get my hands on the original trio, which was the Rogue Trader rulebook, the compendium, and the compilation. They were the three. And there's a few others, like the Chaos ones, that kind of float around, but those were the core three. And we had photocopies of the compilation and the compendium, because one of the dudes who had it refused to give them out. So they went to school and got photocopied in the library at 5 cents a copy. And yeah, Tim was the only one who had the rule book. So if any of you want to get rid of any of those 3 books, hit me up and let me know, because I'd love to have them as part of the collection. They're 3 books that I, as a kid, never bought, and they're really hard to come by these days. At least in good nick, anyway. You can buy the cheap and tatty ones relatively cheaply, but I'd like a decent
But you
set.
still don't have those either.
No.
Okay. So there you go, Justin. Hopefully that
There's plenty more stories from my 40K years, but they're,
shared a little bit of who we are.
yeah.
Tim asked, do we want to talk about the TO?
No,
perspective, or
it's
you've
an interesting
already-
one. I answered that in the chat because unless someone's got any other insight to it, you can go and look at the question in the chat. It's just relating to how an apothecary revives a model.
So if a model, let's say Space Marine Aggressor, returns from the dead via some rule, let's say the apothecary is,
So if this
Nah.
happens, we can take away
how do you
the
pronounce that word?
Narcathium,
Yep, that one. Ability which is completed at the end of the movement phase.
Narthesium.
Would a zombie aggressor model count as having moved for their firestorm rule?
No.
Is the short answer.
Yeah.
And the long answer, he's written out in the...
Yeah, basically the rule for the aggressors to fire twice requires that the model not move for its movement phase, and being revived happens at the end of the movement phase, which means the model would not have moved. Therefore, it can fire twice. Unless there's an FAQ answer somewhere or anyone can shed some more light on it, I can't find any references to it. So that would be the way I would rule it, is that based on the information I've looked up so far, that's the answer.
Beautiful. Matt would like to know more about the painting competitions that we're going to have at show, what categories there might be. So it will be the same as last year. We had...
So it was sci-fi, single model, big model unit, and then it was fantasy, the same 3 categories. Then we had an open category, and then we had a historic as well.
I don't think we had an open. We only had 3.
There were 10 categories.
We had young...
Oh, Youngbloods was the 10th, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it was basically small, medium, and squad
Yeah, so diorama
/ squad.
/ squad. Oh,
Science fiction, fantasy, and historical, essentially.
Yeah.
So we'll probably try and replicate that again.
Yep, we will be,
And,
because I've written it. So we're just anything that has been written, we will be reusing.
And we might look for, like I've got a few different places I want to try and get in touch with to see whether we can get some more cool prizes and maybe some trophies and stuff this year as well. You know, now that we've kind of got a feel for what people want and what they like based off last year.
Yep.
So, and we have to say thank you to Stanbridges and to Hobbytech for last year's.
Yeah.
Because they gave us a bunch of like vouchers and brushes and all sorts of paraphernalia last year.
Brushes,
So
and paint holders, and all of those
Yeah.
kinds of
Hopefully
things.
they'll support it and maybe come along this year.
So yeah, that'll all be going up fingers crossed within the next week.
I think that's optimistic.
I said fingers crossed. And Timo says AOS is a good topic. Now, it is, but it is somewhat broad.
Look, I can say, and I've been sworn to secrecy on this, but I can say that there is
I've been sworn to secrecy, but I'm going to tell you.
I can't tell you everything. I can only tell you something. I can say that there is a big community project that's not related to Games Workshop. It is a community project that is going on at the moment in Australia. And as soon as I'm allowed to share it, because the website is in test phases at the moment, I got a link to it about an hour ago, just prior to us recording. And I got to check it out very briefly before this this live stream. It's quite exciting because it is community driven. It is Australian community driven, and hopefully it'll see another resurgence for AOS, not just locally but Australia wide, to really have the community sort of expand and grow again.
So we will be running AOS on the 9th of June as well.
And then
I am going to be working my butt off on show stuff pretty much from now until September, but you're working on getting all the players packs sorted for 9th of June.
Yep. So the Shadespire one, like I say, I've now got the draft players pack from for the Clash, so I can use that as a basis for the test, just to run the event through and see what happens. The 40k one will be the first one. It'll essentially be a War Calls Mark II. We ran War Calls last year as our first 8th ed, so this will be our first
8th ed
with the FAQ.
Was it 8.5?
A lot of people call it, I'm going to say 8.1 because I reckon we're going to have more than a few of these over the next little while.
Yeah.
Didn't Warhammer World re-release the Road Trader book? They did, but for some reason I couldn't order it here, which is really upsetting. So we're going to have the 40k. It'll probably be 3 games, 1850, 3 detachments, full FAQ, beta rules, everything. And we'll obviously we're going to expand the times per round because we want to make sure that we are sort of giving people the opportunity to catch some of the rules changes and things. I think 4 games at 1850 in one day is just largely impossible, really. It won't be. It will be competitive lists, but there will be hobby elements for scoring as well. So you will have to have painted armies, and there will be sports scorers as well. So it will be similar, but not.
So back to Age of Sigma. What are we planning for Age of Sigma?
Well,
for the 9th of June.
I'm actually talking with a couple of the guys doing a little bit closer to a narrative style day. Now, not a full narrative day, but there's the open play cards, which I've been playing a little bit with 40k, and there's apparently a deck for Age of Sigma. So I want to pick some people's brains about what is in that deck and how it plays out, and then maybe make it into a more hobby-driven AOS event where we'll still play big armies and we'll still play bigger, maybe 1850 or 2,000 point armies, 3 games, 1 day, but we might be playing with some random missions on the day to kind of make it a bit more fun, a bit more hobby-driven as opposed to a hyper-competitive day. Yeah. So hold off on starting to build and paint stuff just this second, and for any sort of narrative theme you might have. But hopefully that players pack will be out in the next 3 or 4 days, by the end of the weekend with a bit of luck.
Yeah, he noticed he didn't say which weekend.
Yeah.
So you need to get on that. So other Age of Sigma stuff that we're doing, we will obviously have Age of Sigma at show, which will be a 1-day event. We are looking at hosting a separate Age of Sigma Masters. We've just got to work out when to put that, so it's after show. But
before 40k
Masters, because straight after 40k Masters, we're hoping to hit Warhammer World.
Yeah.
So.
Probably October at this point.
Awesome. That should give us at least 4 days to have a nervous breakdown after show before we hit.
No, it'll all be prepared. It'll all be fine. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Like to know how long I've got for my breakdowns.
Look, the first
Not
week,
long at all.
Like we've got 40Ks at the 17th and 18th, or 18th and 19th of November.
17th and 18th.
For in completely unrelated, and I can't substantiate this in any way, shape, or form. Some of you may have seen Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics got engaged today, and congratulations, Lawrence, if you do watch this.
We also have to say congratulations to Rob, who got engaged just before.
Rob Horton, yes.
Yes, just before. What was the name of that event?
WATZ.
Yeah.
And then came back and played Jet Lagged and did really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talking to Lawrence today, they announced their engagement. It was all cool. And I sent him a message we've been chatting since we met at LVO, and he made a comment saying that he wants to come out and play at one of our events.
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest to him show first, and then if he can't make it for show, because that seems quite soon, I'm going to see if he can come over for 40K Masters and maybe show you a lot how to play. So could be a cool weekend for him. Apparently he's got family over here.
Awesome.
On the East Coast.
Yeah.
So
everyone thinks that we're very close to the East Coast. But
no, I've explained that. He knows we're not near the East Coast, but apparently he'll fly into the East Coast and then leave his fiancée there and come over to Perth. So that'll be really cool if he can make it over this year or maybe early next. So as soon as I find out when he is coming, we'll let you guys know as well. But it's kind of cool to have him come over and say hi.
Awesome. I'm going to take it back to Age of Sigma. Because it said talk about Age of Sigma, and every time I try, you change the subject.
Well, you won't let me build an Age of Sigma army. Who says I want to play Daughters of Cain? I've got a couple of boxes out there already.
This is not open for voting.
It is open for voting.
You can vote all you like, but you're still not having an Age of Sigma army.
I've got the start of a Daughters of Cain army out there.
You promised me that was not going to be an Age of Sigma army. You promised me that was going to be converted and used for your current army.
Yeah.
That then went on a back burner because you needed to build a Tau army.
Yep.
No. Anyway, so Age of Sigma, we are running. We did talk about doing a team event for Age of Sigma as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably not going to happen this year, and we'll have to see what we can do for next year at this point.
The only other, we've obviously got the 40K mixed doubles that happens at the end of July. There is a possibility of running something AOS on that weekend.
That day, yeah.
Mixed doubles last year, we ended up with 72 players. But of course, because it's 4 players to a table, you actually ended up with 16 tables.
Yeah.
So we had plenty of room in the hall. So there's nothing stopping us looking at an AOS event. We tried the 4 horsemen format, which was essentially one of each of the Grand Alliances on a team.
I forgot we'd done that.
Which was done, it was either the mixed gaming day or on mixed doubles. I forget which. It was mixed gaming day because we had bolt action there as well. And it kind of worked and it kind of didn't. So
we thought maybe it hadn't worked so well because Age of Sigma was still relatively new at the time.
Yeah, look, and also the way the alliances were set up was the issue, because there were we had a lot of teams of 3 where they're going, cool.
No, well, that's what I mean.
Getting the 4th was hard because no one played that particular alliance in their group of friends. I still think it's a really solid opportunity to play a team event with, but I'm still concerned, maybe with the release of the Daughters of Cain and the Ideneth Deepkin. We've now got we've since had the I want to say dwarves, but they're not. They're the Karakadin with the blimps and all that sort of stuff. They're now out. We've had a lot more releases since, and also the new General's Handbook's not that far away either. So maybe there's an opportunity to try it again this year. If you want to interested in an AOS team event, let us know.
Yeah, that's it.
And look,
putting one on if you guys don't want to do it, and if you do want to do it, we'll see what we can do.
Look, there's already 3 votes here for me to make my Daughters of Cain an army.
Guess what? I outrank them. All of them together.
We'll keep working on it. It's fine.
All right. Well, that's the end of our questions.
That is the end of the questions that we've had through today. There's a few of them there that probably need way more time than we've given them today.
Yeah.
Particularly the women in gaming one. We've actually been talking to another couple in America who, much like us, are involved in the community, except they're not organisers. They are players who go to events and, husband, I'm assuming husband and wife. I probably shouldn't say that now. But they go to events together and they do all this sort of stuff together within the community. So we might even try and do a crossover and get them involved to answer that question as well, because it might be interesting to see her thoughts on that. And there's also a couple of other women here in Perth that we can certainly get involved with answering those questions as well. All of them have partners who either roped them in or they had their own interests and got involved with their partners, or maybe they got their partners involved. Yeah,
that's one of the reasons that we did start the mixed doubles event, which I'm sure I've written about copiously on the blog. But yeah, so at the first, so the reason that we started the mixed doubles event was at the first Masters. I was running around like an idiot doing 19 million things. And there were quite a few women who actually attended as spectators.
Yeah.
And so when I was chatting to them or overhearing them, asking, do you play? Are you involved in the hobby at all? They said that they were involved, but they, were intimidated to come along and play at the event. So we created a space where people would hopefully feel safe coming along and playing if they were not necessarily comfortable coming to play in an individual solo singles event. But the question around how you can encourage people to start playing is probably one that I need to think on a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very fortunate that there have been some lovely ladies come and attend. So we have Alice come and regularly attend events, Gillen, Bree, before she got very heavily pregnant. We also had Alison turning up and playing games with Dan.
Mm-hmm. Natara's attended.
Yeah, Natara's come.
Double,
and
Eloise has attended as well.
There's been a few of them come along to that mixed day.
Oh, Keely?
Oh, Keely from Bunbury, yes.
Mm-hmm.
She's I've seen her at a couple of events now. One of ours down in Bunbury as well when I went down and played.
And Jake's wife came up as well. I'm so sorry, I've forgotten Jake's wife's name.
No, I don't remember off the top of my head either. I feel really bad about that.
Yeah, me too. She's on our banner and everything.
Yep. Oh, God. But yeah, so we do have, a small array of women who do come and either play or support us in one way or another. There's a few of them who come along when Emma was doing the Warhammer Widows high teas.
Yes.
Who've come along for the booze and the food, and also the company. I think there's you can certainly build some relationships around the community, and when people are free because their partners are all playing at the one event.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some more women involved. Certainly more than I ever remember there being. It was definitely a boys' club if you wind the clock back 5 years.
It's still a boys' club.
It is, but it's getting better. It is definitely getting better.
I'm trying really hard to see what Jake's wife's name is, and it's not on there, and I feel really bad.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, I'll have to find that out. Okay, but not now. You're going to have a look now.
I'll be able to do it because you're not tech savvy.
It's a little bit rude.
You aren't.
Oh, that's true, but it's still rude.
You're the first one to say it most of the time.
Yeah, I know.
Go on.
Okay, I have nothing to say. I feel as though we've finished now.
Oh, really?
Yep.
It's Amy.
I knew it began with an A.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you
anyway.
very much, Amy. You're awesome. Thank
Yes.
you for letting Jake support our events and for all the awesome work that you're going to do supporting him in the new venture down in Bunbury.
And for coming up and playing.
Yeah. So unless anyone else has got any other questions, it's actually pretty warm here now. I'm okay. Tim's just said go and get warm.
I was just thinking I could possibly take the blanket off my knees.
You know what we should have done is just gotten a glass of whiskey each. That would have fixed it right quick.
Taken a fair few painkillers.
I haven't. So
It would have fixed it really quick for me too, but it might not have gone well. Yeah.
But thanks very much for those of you who've hung around for the hour plus that we've now been chatting and answering your questions. We're more than happy to do this every fortnight. It's actually a lot of fun, I find, because we do get some cool comments and some cool questions every week.
I'm not sure if it's useful in any way, shape or form,
Look,
but hey, here we are.
We've had a decent... look, I think we covered the sideboard thing pretty well, and I think we've answered some cool stuff as well. Hang on, we've got another question. Sorry, you may have answered this already. Go on.
I'm
shoot.
sure we have.
Shoot, Joe. Go for it.
Because Hugh's just joined, so it might make him feel as though he hasn't.
Well, Hugh needs to go and tell his brother that he needs to pull out his
Well, Owen was
Orcord.
on here before.
No, that was a different Owen.
Okay.
So Hugh needs to go and tell his brother that he needs to pull out the Orcord so he can play the Grot Horde. And then we can record it. Unabridged, unedited, 7 hours of gaming.
Joe, that's a definite we don't know at this point. Show on Masters, what point levels are we looking at? It's a really tricky one, and we've debated this between the two of us.
I can say that war calls will help inform those decisions because we collected a bunch of the data from WATC in regards to how many turns people played, whether they finished the games naturally, And that was fairly. It was certainly directional in the way that we thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to gather some more information.
So I suppose that when we look at it, we can go Masters is 2 days, therefore
We've got more time to play.
More time, and we can have bigger points levels. And we have been discussing sort of 1850, 2000.
I know that the last few Masters we've always upped the ante in terms of points. So we've done 2250s. It won't be 2250 again. I can
2,500.
Jesus. Now we're gonna have Titans turn up. No, like in all honesty, I think 2000's probably the limit that we'll hit.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of games at Masters not finish, and we also saw a lot of games even at 2250 finish really early. So the really lopsided lists. Was it Jaden who had 5 models? It was like 3 Knights, Gilliman, and a Dominus, I think it was. It was something ridiculous. It was only a handful of models. It was 5. So at 2250, you start hitting problems around scalability for some armies as well, particularly in a competitive format. So
Dom loved 2250.
I think a lot of
you won every single one of your games, Dom.
I think a lot of people enjoyed 2250 because it is bigger and it did let you get a little bit more in. But I also think that you have to up the time, and there's sort of a direct scalability there to some degree. So we'll run war calls and we'll see what falls out of that before we decide on the points for Masters, to see how many people are finishing games, and how many turns they're getting if they don't.
Yeah, so I think because we're doing the war calls too, we're going to do that for 3 games. And
try and actually see how long it takes for people to finish games. Show the tentative plan is 3 separate 40k events.
Although we've spent half of today arguing over that, so let's see how that goes.
There will definitely be 2. Whether there's a third one is up for conversation.
Mm-hmm.
One of them will be Last Blood, which will be basically First Blood Mark II. So it'll be 5 games, 1,000 points, give or take. Maybe some relaxations on the detachment restrictions. I'm not sure yet, but it'll essentially be another heavily slanted hobby event to let you guys do some really cool themed 1,000-point armies. The other one that we've had requested is a more traditional, proper competitive tournament. 1850, 3 detachments, so on and so forth. That's partly in response to the ATC happening at show, where those guys are talking seriously about hanging around and playing 40k on day 3 because they're playing ATC in day 1 and 2. So whether we put a competitive one during ATC or whether we put it at the end for them, obviously we want to make sure that as many people as possible are happy, but we're not going to modify the event just for the ATC guys. So there'll probably be at least those 2, likely a third of some description. It might be Kill Team, it might be Necromunda. It'll be another sci-fi themed game.
It might be Apocalypse.
Look, there's talk already of doing a Siege of Terror for Heresy with big castle walls and a bunch of Titans. It'd be great to see a bunch of Titans for 40k come out and some of the really big monsters. The other one I'd love to do is an air battle.
Yeah, see, this is the problem. It's only 3 days.
Yeah, but I'd love to try and go. Okay, cool. Let's see how many planes that we can do. Like do like a space.
You know the awesome thing about that? No terrain. We should definitely do that. We are doing that 3 days in a row.
See how many aircraft we can get on the table, basically, and see if we can start setting some records and going, we had 300 aircraft on the table, or those sorts of crazy things. So
there's a world record that we could go for that.
I'd like to just set the standard and go, we had this many. Let's see who else in the world can beat us. So you never know. We'll certainly come up with something for the 3rd day, so that if you do decide you want to come and do science fiction all weekend, then hopefully we can cater for that. But we'll see what that format actually looks like, and hopefully we can announce that very shortly.
Cloud terrain. I could probably manage some cotton wool, Richard.
No. We're going to do space. Oh, man. So it's asteroids. That's even easier.
Nothing is easier than cotton wool balls or no terrain.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you've gotten something out of the conversation. Like I said, it's actually kind of fun doing these Q&As and ask us questions. So feel free to think about the next ones. But until
also shoot through topics for
the podcast.
we've got one topic that I really want to cover for the podcast, but it's a little bit controversial. So,
It's certainly a sensitive topic.
yeah, so we might leave it a little bit longer.
I also think it might be worth considering what guests we put on for that one, because I think there's a level of involvement from the community that might help get a better perspective rather than just you and I talking about that one. But we have to figure out exactly who's going to be best to engage for that. Also, if there's any guests you want to listen to on the podcast, let us know and we'll try and get them.
Yes.
That's how it works. Anyway, thanks very much, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you.
If you don't like us on Facebook yet, hit like, please. If you don't like us or haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, do that. Awesome.
Yep. But until then,
See you later.
You'll see us all the usual spots over the next fortnight until the next one of these. So stay safe. Stay safe. Keep an eye out for the Mixed Gaming Day players packs in the next few days and the show announcements later in the month.
Oh.
See you guys. Have a good night.
Happy gaming.